I'm Aditya,
I'm Adarsh.
and this is your Slice of Sports with the Mott Moments podcast.
This is a special edition, another special episode, second one in as many weeks. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, and 2 days ago, the Oklahoma City Thunder became the newest NBA champions with a 103-91 victory over the Pacers in Game 7. This is the Thunder's first championship in Oklahoma City. They did win one back as the Seattle Supersonics, but yeah, the NBA season is officially over, and so we thought we'd just give a little bit of a recap and maybe a look ahead for both these teams.
Yeah, just diving right into it. What a tragic game seven was shaping out to be a really great game. Tyrese was just going ballistic in those first few minutes while he was playing, hitting three threes in short succession. Just not what you want to see in a game seven, right? Just that, like, you want to see a very competitive game, and obviously, once Tyrese went down, it just we all knew that it wasn't competitive anymore. So, shout out the Thunder for getting their first championship in OKC, but obviously not what we wanted to see in terms of competitiveness, in terms of a fan perspective. Um, and I kind of think that's reflected in like the celebration that we've seen in terms of the fan base. It seems muted compared to previous years, even though this is their first championship in their new city. Yeah, just a hard thing to watch, especially after Tyrese's injury.
Yeah, I mean, in case you live under a rock, first quarter, Tyrese Haliburton opened up on fire, 9 points, 3 of 4 from three, but just 7 minutes in, ruptured his Achilles on a drive. He had been dealing with a calf injury, so it's reminiscent of a couple other notable Achilles injuries recently, most notably Kevin Durant about 6 years ago in the NBA Finals as well. Yeah, just got wrenched for Tyrese, of course. One of the best guys in the league. Not to dunk on anyone, but I've been one of his biggest supporters since he came out of the draft. I mean, I thought the Warriors should have probably picked him
Mhm.
pretty high.
For sure.
And he came out right away in Sacramento as a budding star. And for some reason, they decided to trade him. A lot of people have called this the Sabonis deal a win-win. I don't really see that. The Kings got one playoff appearance out of the Sabonis deal, and the Pacers have now been to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals. So, yeah, just terrible to see it. You hate it because Haliburton's such a young guy, ascending star, one of the best postseason runs we've seen in recent memory. But he's young enough. You hope he's going to be able to bounce back. Not really known as an super athletic player, so hopefully this doesn't affect him too much. But yeah, kind of an anticlimactic game seven. It was a close by the score, but it just never really felt after Haliburton went out that Indiana was going to have a chance. Kind of deflated the arena. Even looked like it deflated Oklahoma City's players. They looked kind of tentative throughout the game. Struggled to put it away after a dominant third quarter, and struggled shooting the ball team wide. The finals MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, put together 29 points and 12 assists, but shot just 8 of 27 from the field. His counterpart, Jalen Williams, had 20 points on 20 shots, and no other real big time contribution besides Chet Holmgren, who finally came to play in this series with 18 points on 6 of 8 shooting, as well as a Game 7 NBA Finals record 5 blocks. Um, yeah, it felt like I thought that Indiana was just going to be rolled over when Tyrese went out, just based on the mental aspect. But they fought, and big credit to them. I mean, they're a resilient group, and they have been all season long.
Yeah, the first, second, and fourth quarters, just looking at the box score, all look very close. But obviously, that third quarter where the Pacers were outscored 34-20, that's just a deal breaker. Looking at like the four factors for both teams, Pacers actually had a better efficient field goal percentage than the Thunder by just 0.3%, 0.03%, my bad. But their turnover percentage, 21.7% compared to OKC's 7.4%. Um, and their offensive rating, probably because of the fact that Tyrese went out, just abysmal 99.6 compared to OKC's 112.7. So just not really what you want to see. In terms of a game seven performance. And obviously we were hoping that Pascal and some of the major role players could maybe shoulder the offensive burden once Tyrese was gone, but Pascal ended up shooting 5 for 13 um, with 16 points. Not really what you want to see from your second option, but obviously, like once your first facilitator is gone, they can throw double teams. They can really send the house at Pascal to make sure he can't score. Um, Not really a great game from Miles Turner, just 6 points. He only shot 4 shots. Not really like I want something you want to see. Yeah, Chet Holmgren, big shout out to him. He's been kind of stinky this whole series, but he shot 6 for 8. He had a true shooting of 78%, very good. And yeah, like you mentioned, he had those 5 blocks. So the OKC definitely, OKC Thunder definitely came in looking like they wanted it. But I mean, just the fact, I mean, we can say 1,000 times the fact that this Tyrese Haliburton injury happened kind of just took away from the entire thing. But yeah, I think we can, unless you have more to talk about, I think we can move on to the outlooks for both teams going forward.
Yeah, final word on really this game alone was interesting TJ McConnell game. I thought he
Mhm.
was one of the best, if not the best player for the Pacers in this series, but he had 16 points, dominant in the third quarter, but also had 7 turnovers, very uncharacteristic of him. Um, but I mean, no matter what he was able to do, didn't really feel like they were going to have much of a chance at the end. About your point about the injuries, it's one of the things I hate the most about NBA fandom is how, every year there's 29 fan bases that are upset because their team didn't win.
Mhm.
And, they're going to find a way to discredit what the winning team does. So, yes, the Thunder benefited from injuries. John Morant was out for a couple games in round one, and Tyrese was banged up in this series. And you could even say that Anthony Edwards was bothered by some sort of injury in the Western Conference Finals. But ultimately, you just have to play who's in front of you. And you can make the injuries argument for literally every single ring that's happened ever.
Yeah.
You can make the argument for the Pacers, how, Damian Lillard was banged up in round one, and the entire Cavaliers team was banged up in round two. But ultimately, the Thunder won 68 games. They were the best team in the league this year. They deserved this championship. And despite the kind of quiet fanfare, they haven't really had the same sort of not Super Bowl, NBA Finals parade that other teams have had.
Mhm.
Still one of the better teams that we've had in the last few years, and big credit to them and to their coaching staff and development team for building this team up from. I mean, 3 years ago their wins were like they were in the 20s in terms of wins. I don't know the exact number. I believe it was 24 or something like that. Uh, yeah, 24 wins in 2021, 2022, and then 40 wins 2 years ago as a play-in team, and then 57 a year ago and 68 this year. Just a clinic in how to rebuild a team. Really impressive. But yeah, moving forward, what makes this Oklahoma City team so dangerous is that every single player in their roster pretty much is under contract next year.
Yeah.
Um, you're going to talk about extensions for SGA, who's eligible for a supermax gajillion dollar contract. Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams will be entering the final years of their rookie deals. Probably good consideration for rookie max extension for Williams, possibly for Holmgren. You also got, um, you're going to get Nikola Topic, who was their lottery pick
Mhm.
last year. He's going to come in healthy this year. He was a guy who was touted as potentially number one pick if he was healthy. And the Thunder have 2 first-round picks in the upcoming draft, and possibly 4 in the 2026 draft. So, when people throw around the word dynasty, it's kind of frustrating because there's only been like 4 dynasties ever. But I mean, with all the draft picks and the youth, you could see maybe not a dynasty, but maybe 1 or 2 more rings in the near future for this OKC team.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have the ability to let players go that are becoming too expensive and replace them with very solid options out of the draft, which are probably going to be very high picks, so very quality players. On your point of dynasty, I think the fact that the NBA in the last 5 years, I mean, it's been different champions every single year. I personally don't think that we'll see an OKC repeat ring just because of the amount of parity that's going around in the league and the fact that injuries are just becoming worse. Like we've seen 3 Achilles tears on the Pacers just in the last year, right? And I saw a paper that came out a few days ago that said that like this rate of injuries in NBA players has skyrocketed, and that's probably because of more minutes, more games, the fact that they can't do load management anymore with the new rules, a bunch of factors. So. I think there's definitely an argument that can be made that the Thunder can definitely run it back. Obviously, like you mentioned, they have basically everyone under contract in the 25-26 season. And they're gonna have to extend their players, but they'll still have a lot of options. If you have your core of Shea, Jalen Williams, and Chet, even if you just surround them with quality role players like your Alex Caruso's and your Lou Dortz, you can still probably go uh, pretty far. Looking at the Pacers, though, um, they do have to re-sign Miles Turner, Isaiah Jackson, and some smaller pieces like Thomas Bryant. But they do still have their major players, Pascal, Tyrese, Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin is eligible for an extension. But they have a lot of the major pieces. Obi Toppin and Aaron Nesmith are still under contract, but obviously without Tyrese, I mean, it's going to be extremely hard, right? Um, Maybe this is their chance. They just traded back for their first round pick a few days ago from I believe the Pelicans. So, if they're just not that good this season and they get a very good player in the next draft, and Tyrese comes back even 90% of the quality that he was this year, in 2 years he might be saying their name in the finals again. I think that's a really interesting concept for them as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Listen, given how weak the East is next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana's again a top four seed, even with
Yeah.
Haliburton out. Um, and they're just a very, very well coached group. They've got a lot of talent. Even though the star power isn't what you'd expect from a finals team, they play well together. They play the right way, and again, really well coached. And Rick Carlisle can guide them through tough times, even without their star, I believe. Um, Quick point, going back to the dynasty thing. The reason I agree with you that it's going to be tough for them to make a dynasty is just the the way that like the financials are laid out in the NBA right now, the second apron and how
Mhm.
restricted they are. I
Mhm.
remember 3 years ago when the Warriors won their fourth title, and people were saying, look at how young they are on their bench. They could be, this dynasty could stretch on, and then the young guys don't pan out, and the Warriors are where they are right now, kind of struggling to be
Yeah.
relevant. And then the next year, the Nuggets won, and people were saying how, this could be a dynasty because of Jokic. And then their bench leaves in free agency, and then they lose in the second round. And then last year, the Celtics win, and we're like, this is legitimately a super team. They're probably going to be a dynasty. And then you see what happens with the injuries and their philosophy of 3-point shooting coming to bite them sometimes. And then the news that's come out the last couple of days with trading Drew Holiday to Portland and Kristaps Porzingis today traded a salary dump to Atlanta, and Jason Tatum's out for the year. So I mean, life comes at you fast. Um, we of course hope that everybody's able to stay healthy and doesn't have debilitating injuries. And Oklahoma City's got a lot of depth, but you just really don't know what's going to happen. Um, I would love to see them, win another ring in the near future. But I also love that parity that we have in the NBA today. So, we'll see. Uh, the draft picks that OKC has is really, it gives them a lot of room for error in terms of contracts and potentially some health scares here and there. But both of these teams, I think, will be very relevant next year, even in a more difficult Western Conference for Oklahoma City. And then the easier Eastern Conference for Indiana will make it, I think, much easier for them to be relevant. Just to be clear, I don't believe Haliburton will play a single minute next year. So it's not going to be like, tread water until he comes back for the playoffs. Like it would be in his best interest to sit out the entire year, make sure he's right, and come back in 2026, 2027, as the Haliburton we know he is. So yeah, you know, this was a very entertaining NBA Finals. In my opinion, the best since 2022 at least.
Mhm.
Um, we got a game seven. It wasn't the game seven we would have wanted, but nonetheless, six great games before that. And two very, you know, very well coached teams, but also two teams that we don't, we haven't typically seen in this place, smaller market teams, not, the super teams of old. And that's kind of reflective of what the era of the NBA is right now, where, stacking stars together just doesn't work. You have to have the chemistry and, the locker room culture to help you get this far.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have a few points that you talked about. Like the CBA, definitely the new one is really restrictive on the amount of like dynasty building that a team can do. So we'll definitely see. I'm sure they'll eventually come up with some loophole or some way around that, especially with the wealth of draft picks that they have. And yeah, moving forward, I think that teams are definitely gonna have to start prioritizing depth. Obviously, both of these teams were very, very deep, but they definitely had a star, right? Like you had your Shea and your Tyrese. But you didn't have like I wouldn't compare them to like a Stephen Curry of old, where you just put the ball in their hands and just try to go off of them, or a LeBron James, right? Where their usage percentages in like the 60, 70%. So I definitely think that'll be interesting looking forward to next year. Like Pistons, have interesting depth. Other teams that maybe are younger and have a lot of players that they can develop, um, the Rockets, even, they didn't lose much when they traded KD, and I think we should maybe mention that as well, that KD was traded to the Rockets. That was a second seed team that now just got KD and also took away Jalen Green, who was very inconsistent for them. So I think definitely going forward in this new NBA era that we're in, we're going to be seeing teams that are really focused on depth, and just making sure that even if one player isn't playing well on a night, they're having an off night, other players can come in. And in the NBA Finals, when you rely on a lot of guys and put the ball in different people's hands, you can have trust that one guy will make their three-pointer, and you don't have to just rely on one other guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely slipped my mind to mention the KD trade. Mixed up the days, but
Hmm.
yeah, we recorded our last pod on Saturday, and then KD was traded Sunday morning. So yeah, Durant's a Rocket. Quick point on the West and the East here. It's the ridiculous like imbalance between these two. Because if you
Yeah.
look at the 8 playoff teams from the West this year, OKC, Houston, Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Timberwolves, Warriors, Grizzlies. I feel like all 8 of those teams are going to be relevant next year.
Hmm.
Even the Grizzlies who traded away Bane. And then you have the Mavericks who, if they get Kyrie back healthy and they add Cooper Flag in this draft, hopefully more health for Anthony Davis. And you got the Spurs who will have a healthy Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox and potentially whoever they add in the offseason. Even the Portland Trailblazers, they had a winning record the second half of last year. As I said, they just added Drew Holiday. Maybe a third year breakout for Scoot Henderson or something.
Hmm.
13 teams that I mentioned or something of that sort, 13 or 12 teams that are going to be very relevant. That's not even counting, a team like the Sacramento Kings who they've got talent, lacking star power, kind of lacking that winning culture. Phoenix Suns, they still got Devin Booker, even with, this weird shooting guard kind of logjam they've got with Bradley Beal and Jalen Green. And then when you contrast that with the East, the top teams from last year, Cleveland, they've got injury questions with Darius Garland. The Celtics, as I've mentioned before, completely gutted their roster in the last couple of days. Knicks are looking for a coach still. The Pacers, Haliburton's out. The Bucks have Lillard out. Then you got the Pistons, the Magic who just added Desmond Bane, and then I mean Philadelphia maybe if they can get an healthy Embiid, but I feel like the jury's out on them. And then a bunch of rebuilding teams. So the East is wide, wide, wide open. It's hard not to like a team like Cleveland in that mix, but it's just it feeds more into the idea that maybe the league could use some sort of realignment. Because I feel like this has been one of the biggest talking points in the last like 5, 6, even up to 10 years is how much better the West is than the East,
Yeah.
and possibly that could be a source of why it feels like a lot of the better teams out of the last few years have been from the West.
I definitely agree with the realignment, right? I think especially as they start focusing on expansion teams, in Vegas and possibly Seattle, I think we definitely should see some realignment. Obviously, like why is Minnesota in the West? They are on the East, right? So maybe they should be there. And just in terms of like quality of games, right? Like a lot of the Eastern Conference games, when you have two bad teams going against each other, something we'll talk about in our Saturday pod actually is how to fix the NBA. So like when you have two bad teams going against each other, no one wants to watch that. So
Right.
yeah, that's definitely a great point. Um, and yeah, the East is just not a good conference, right? So we might see the Cavs, obviously, with all of these injuries, especially with the juggernaut Celtics, who maybe they'll trade Jalen Brown as well, just tear it all down. Um, yeah, West is just looking at, I wish our Warriors weren't in the West at this point, right? Like,
Definitely, yeah.
you never know, they might be the 10th seed next year just because the rest of the league, the rest of the conference is just so good. So yeah, I definitely think next year will be very interesting, but we might just see it again where the West is just a bloodbath and the East is just a if you're just average, then you're going to make the playoffs.
Yep. And kind of the last point before we end this little mini pod, I want to go back to my preseason predictions for this season. See what I got East standings, West standings, and then major awards. So Right off the bat, I predicted SJ would be the MVP, so I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back for that. But there were some bad picks in here, like six man of the year being Bobby Portis, most
Okay.
most improved player Jonathan Kuminga. I picked Zach Edey to win Rookie of the Year, which I don't think that was that bad of a prediction,
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
I picked Wemby to win Defensive Player of the Year. Kind of got robbed there. I mean, if he
Yeah.
was healthy. Clutch Player of the Year, I picked Paolo Banchero. Again, kind of injuries ruined any chance of that ever happening. Um, and standings, some of the best picks. I picked OKC to be the first seed.
Mm.
Um, I picked the Clippers to be 13th. Um, that was not good. And then the New Orleans Pelicans seventh, also not good.
Mm.
Sacramento third, also not good. In the East, I had Detroit out of the play-in entirely. I had the Magic at third and Philadelphia at seventh. So, I
Mm.
mean, all this goes to say, we can preview what next year might look like, but ultimately there's going to be a lot of surprises. And as much as I'm excited for what's going to unfold in next season, there's also the fact that, the NBA season's over and now we've got what, 4 months until basketball again. That's kind of frustrating, but
Yeah, I mean, I feel like right now is a lull. Obviously, you have WNBA, you have baseball, but like no NBA and NFL, which are obviously our two major interests. So yeah, next few months will be tough. Obviously, once we get into like August, September, we'll have NFL back, which will be very exciting. But yeah, I mean, it's always tough to know that we don't have basketball for another few months. I think personally that basketball is the most interesting sport to watch, just because of, the physicality that goes into it, the star power, and then the constant action. But yeah, I mean, I think this is probably one of the best seasons in the past few years. Especially like these playoffs are definitely up there in terms of their quality. But yeah, we'll talk about how to fix the NBA in our upcoming talk on Saturday. We have a bit more about the NFC South, and then yeah, we'll just continue saying our thoughts, and then yeah, you can say our final words, and we'll just finish off
yeah,
with
and
that.
make sure you guys comment below if you want us to do an Angel Reese breakdown next week.
For sure,
Double,
and the Golden State Valkyries.
yeah. Hey, Valkyries are cooking. We gotta give credit where credit's due. They're an expansion team, and they're literally better than like half the WNBA. Pulling up the standings right now, they're like what, 7-6 as an expansion team. That's super
Yeah,
impressive. Chicago Sky are 4-10. Just saying. But yeah,
yeah.
thanks everyone for listening. And I hope this NBA season was as enjoyable for you guys as it was for us. Even though our team didn't win. But it is what it is. But yeah, going forward, we'll have a lot more content for you guys, even with the off season. There's a lot of excitement with free agency, the draft, and everything that's going to go into shaping what the 2025-2026 season will be. And here's hoping that it's going to be even better than this past year. So, yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you guys again this weekend.